They had watched Earth for 17 years. They had sent tiny probes no bigger than insects to drift through human cities. They had intercepted radio signals and television broadcasts. They had mapped every military base, counted every warship, and studied every weapon the humans possessed. Fleet Admiral sat in his command chair aboard the flagship Eternal Conquest and reviewed the final reports with all four of his eyes. Everything looked perfect for invasion. The humans were a strange species. They had pale, soft skin with no natural armor. They possessed no claws, no venom, no ability to regenerate lost limbs. Their teeth were flat and useless for combat. They could not see in the dark. They could not hear the frequencies that most predator species used for hunting. By every measure they used to judge a species, humans were weak. But they had numbers. Nearly 8 billion of them crawled across the surface of their little blue world. They had built towering cities and connected themselves with networks of roads and cables. They had split the atom and walked on their moon. For a species so physically inferior, they had accomplished impressive things. The problem, as saw it, was that they could not stop fighting each other. His intelligence officers had documented over 40 active armed conflicts happening simultaneously across the planet. Humans killed each other over territory, over resources, over ideas, over the color of their skin, over which invisible gods they chose to worship. They were a fractured species, divided into nearly 200 separate political territories that spent more time threatening each other than cooperating. This was excellent news for the invasion. His tactical adjutant, a younger officer named Al, stood beside the command chair and pointed at the holographic display. The blue marble of Earth rotated slowly, covered in red dots that marked military installations. "Their weapons are primitive but functional," Al said. "They possess nuclear capability, which is concerning. However, their delivery systems are slow. Their fastest missiles would take 30 minutes to reach orbit. We could destroy them before they launched." Clicked his mandibles in what his species used for a smile. "And their people, how will they respond to our arrival?" Based on our analysis of their entertainment media, they have imagined alien invasion many times. In most of their stories, they either defeat the invaders through cleverness or they are quickly conquered. Their governments have no unified response plan. They will argue among themselves while we establish control. The Admiral rose from his chair and walked to the observation window. Outside, the stars stretched in all directions. Behind him floated the Armada, 12,000 warships arranged in perfect formation, carrying 2 million soldiers. They had conquered 63 worlds with this fleet. They had never lost. "Begin the approach," ordered. The fleet emerged from fold space in a carefully calculated position above Earth's northern hemisphere. The timing was deliberate. They appeared in daylight over North America and Europe, where the most powerful human nations were located. They wanted to be seen. And they were seen. The moment the ships appeared, every satellite in orbit went dark. Electromagnetic pulses swept across the planet, disabling the networks that humans depended on. Then the broadcasts began. Had recorded his ultimatum in 47 human languages, and it now played on every television, every radio, every device that still functioned. "People of Earth, I am Fleet Admiral of the Dominion. Your world is now under our control. You will surrender unconditionally within 6 of your hours, or we will begin the systematic destruction of your cities. Resistance is not advised. Compliance will be rewarded. You have been conquered." He expected panic. Every species panicked when they first saw the Armada. They had studied the psychology of conquest for thousands of years. First came denial, then fear, then desperate attempts at resistance, then collapse and submission. The process usually took less than a planetary rotation. Humans did not follow the process. The first reports from the intelligence officers were confusing. They had restored partial access to human communication networks to monitor the response, and what they found made no sense. "Admiral," the communications officer said slowly, They are not panicking. Turn from the window, explain. Their emergency services have activated. Their military forces are mobilizing, but the civilian population is. The officer paused, searching for the right word. They are excited. Excited. Yes, Admiral, they are discussing the invasion on their social networks. They are making jokes. They are arguing about whether we are hostile or peaceful. Some of them are placing wagers on the outcome. The officer's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep confusion. They do not seem afraid. This was unusual. Had seen many species react to invasion with calm acceptance or philosophical resignation. He had seen species try to negotiate or to flee. He had never seen a species respond to overwhelming military force with enthusiasm. "Show me," he ordered. The holographic display shifted to show intercepted communications. Humans were indeed discussing the invasion, but not in the way expected. They were comparing the ships to vessels from their entertainment media. They were debating which human militaries would respond first. They were forming groups to observe the landing parties. Some were expressing disappointment that the aliens had not landed in their particular city. One message, translated from a language called English, read, "Finally something interesting happening. Hope they land near me. I've been training for this my whole life." Al studied the display with growing unease. "Admiral, I am detecting unusual activity at thousands of locations across the planet. Humans are gathering in large numbers." "Military formations." "No, Admiral. These appear to be civilian facilities, training centers of some kind." Al manipulated the display to show one such location. It was a simple building in a human city, and inside, dozens of humans were engaged in physical combat with each other. "They are fighting, Admiral, but there are no weapons. They are using only their bodies." Watched the footage in silence. The humans grappled with each other, threw each other to the ground, struck each other with their fists and feet. But they were not trying to kill each other. After each exchange of violence, they would stand, touch hands in some ritual gesture, and begin again. "What is this?" he asked. "We believe it is called training, Admiral. They are practicing combat." "For what purpose? We have already announced the invasion. Are they preparing to resist?" Al checked the timestamps on the footage. His mandibles went slack with shock. "Admiral, this footage was captured 3 days ago, before our arrival. They were doing this already." Stared at the display. Across the planet, in thousands upon thousands of these training facilities, humans were fighting each other. Not soldiers, civilians. Men and women and even children, learning how to hurt each other with their bare hands. They did this regularly, willingly, without any external threat forcing them to prepare. "Find me more information," ordered. "I want to understand what we are dealing with." The intelligence officers worked through the night. They dug through human databases, analyzed centuries of historical records, and compiled a report that would change everything the thought they knew about warfare. When Al presented the findings the next morning, his voice was unsteady. "Admiral, humans do not practice combat because they fear invasion. They practice combat because they enjoy it." "Explain." "They have developed hundreds of distinct systems for inflicting physical harm using only their bodies. They have names for these systems: karate, judo, boxing, wrestling, Thai, Brazilian, Kung. The list continues for pages." Al swallowed nervously. "They teach these skills to their young. They hold competitions. They pay to watch others fight. They celebrate their greatest fighters as heroes." "How many humans possess this training?" "We cannot determine an exact number, Admiral, but the facilities we have identified suggest tens of millions, perhaps hundreds of millions." Felt something he had not experienced in a very long time. It was a cold sensation that started in his chest and spread to his limbs. It took him a moment to recognize it as fear. "Begin the landing," he said quietly, "but tell the ground forces to proceed with caution." The shuttle doors opened, and the shock troops marched onto human soil. They were the finest soldiers in 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. They had been genetically enhanced for strength and speed. They had been psychologically conditioned to feel no fear. They carried plasma rifles that could burn through steel. They were not prepared for what came next. The first landing zone was a large open area in a city called. They had chosen it because it was surrounded by tall buildings that would provide good defensive positions. They expected the humans to flee or to observe from a distance. Instead, a crowd of several hundred humans had already gathered at the edge of the landing zone. They were not running. They were watching. Some of them held up small rectangular devices that glowed with light. They appeared to be recording the event. Squad leader raised his weapon and activated his translator. Humans will disperse. This area is under control. You will not interfere. The humans did not disperse. They murmured among themselves. Some of them smiled. Then a young human male broke from the crowd and sprinted directly at. The squad leader's training took over. He raised his plasma rifle and aimed at the charging human. The creature was fast, faster than the intelligence reports had suggested. His finger tightened on the trigger. The human ducked. The movement was so quick that barely registered it. One moment the human was running toward him. The next moment the human was below the level of his weapon, sliding across the ground and sweeping his legs out from under him with a powerful kick. Crashed to the pavement. Before he could understand what was happening, the human was on top of him. Soft hands gripped his armored limbs and bent them in ways they were not supposed to bend. The human's legs wrapped around his body like constricting serpents. Pressure built against his throat, cutting off his air supply. The other soldiers stood frozen, unsure how to respond. Their squad leader was being choked by an unarmed civilian, and they could not fire without hitting him. Slapped the ground in desperation. The human immediately released him and stood up. The crowd roared. They cheered and clapped their hands together. The young human bowed slightly, then jogged back to join them. Other humans slapped his back and embraced him with obvious celebration. Lay on the ground, gasping for air. His throat burned. His arm ached where the human had bent it. His pride was shattered. "What?" he managed to say. "What just happened?" His soldiers had no answer. None of their training had prepared them for an enemy that could defeat them with bare hands, and then simply walk away without finishing the kill. The reports came in from across the planet, and each one was worse than the last. In Tokyo, a patrol had entered a building to search for resistance fighters. Inside, they found a room full of elderly humans in white robes. The soldiers ordered the humans to kneel and submit. Instead, the elderly humans had attacked them with wooden sticks. Within minutes, all 12 soldiers were unconscious on the floor. The old humans then calmly returned to their previous activity, which appeared to be a form of meditation. In Moscow, a squad attempting to establish a checkpoint was attacked by a group of humans who wore heavy jackets despite the warm weather. The humans grabbed the soldiers by their armor and threw them through the air with devastating force. Warriors, each weighing over 300 pounds in their combat suits, were tossed around like toys. The humans seemed to be using the soldiers' own weight and momentum against them. In Thailand, a detachment was overwhelmed by humans who used their knees and elbows as weapons. The attacks were brutally efficient. Soldiers with plasma rifles were brought down by strikes to their legs, their arms, their necks. The humans moved like dancers, fluid and graceful, but each movement ended in terrible violence. In the American Midwest, a single human farmer encountered 4 shock troops in his field. He possessed no weapons except his hands. When the soldiers attempted to restrain him, he simply broke them. He twisted their limbs until the joints gave out. He applied pressure to their necks until they lost consciousness. Then, according to the surviving footage, he invited the remaining soldiers into his home and offered them something called sweet tea. Fleet Admiral watched the reports pile up in his command center and felt his certainty crumble. "This is not possible," Al said. We have conquered 63 worlds. We have never faced resistance like this." "These are not soldiers," replied quietly. "These are civilians, farmers, elderly people, children." He pulled up footage from a human school where young humans, some no more than 10 years old, were practicing fighting techniques. They trained their children to fight, not for war, for recreation. How do we defeat a species that fights for fun? The admiral had no answer. He called for his chief, a scholar named Ra who had spent her career studying conquered species. She arrived within minutes, her data pads clutched to her chest. "Tell me everything you know about human combat traditions," ordered. Ra took a deep breath. "Admiral, I have been studying human culture for 15 years. I thought I understood them. I was wrong." She activated a holographic display that showed a timeline of human history. Humans have been fighting since before they developed written language. Their earliest art depicts warfare. Their earliest stories celebrate warriors. Their gods are gods of battle. Many species have warrior traditions. We have defeated them all. "Yes, Admiral, but those species fought out of necessity. They fought for survival, for resources, for territory. When the threat was removed, they stopped fighting." Ra's voice dropped. "Humans never stop. When they have no external enemies, they fight each other. When they have no wars, they invent games that simulate war. They cannot exist without violence. It is fundamental to their psychology." She showed footage of human sporting events. Millions of humans gathered in massive arenas to watch individuals fight each other. The crowd screamed with excitement as competitors struck each other, bled on the ground, and rose to fight again. "This is called boxing," Ra explained. "Two humans stand in an enclosed space and hit each other in the head until one of them cannot continue. This is one of their oldest sports. They have practiced it for thousands of years." "Why would any species do this to itself?" "Because they enjoy it, Admiral. The fighters enjoy the violence. The spectators enjoy watching. The entire species is addicted to combat." Studied the footage. The human fighters moved with practiced skill. Their punches were fast and precise. They could take tremendous punishment and keep fighting. Between rounds, they sat on small chairs and received treatment for their wounds, then stood up and resumed the violence. "These are professional fighters," he said. "Surely the average human is not so capable." Ross switched to different footage. "This is a typical training facility. These are ordinary humans. They go to their jobs during the day, and at night they practice combat." The footage showed humans of all ages and sizes grappling on padded floors. They choked each other. They bent each other's limbs. They struck each other with padded gloves and bare feet. When one of them was injured, they rested briefly and then resumed. "This species has spent its entire existence at war," Ra concluded. "War with the environment, war with predators, war with each other. They have never known peace. They do not want peace. They are not a civilization that practices combat." She paused. "They are a combat species that happens to have built a civilization." The command center fell silent. Every officer present understood what this meant. They had invaded a planet of warriors, not warrior elites, not military specialists. The entire species was trained for violence from birth. They did not fear pain. They sought it out. They did not avoid conflict. They loved it. "Admiral," Al said quietly, "we need to reconsider our strategy." Nodded slowly. For the first time in his long career, he began to consider something he had never considered before. Retreat. The next few days brought only more disturbing information. They had established a communications link with several human governments, expecting to negotiate terms of surrender. Instead, the humans wanted to negotiate terms of combat. "They want to know where we will establish our battle zones," the communications officer reported, his voice tinged with disbelief. "They have citizens who are volunteering to fight us, not soldiers, civilians. They are asking for the opportunity to test themselves against alien warriors." reviewed the requests. Thousands of humans had contacted their governments asking to be sent to fight the invaders. They were not being conscripted. They were not being forced. They wanted this. This message came from a human military official, the officer continued. He is offering to organize the civilians into fighting units. He says, and I quote, that his people have been waiting for this their whole lives. The admiral thought about the 63 worlds they had conquered. On every one of those worlds, the population had begged for peace. They had offered resources, territory, anything to avoid more bloodshed. Surrender was always inevitable once the population understood they could not win. Humans did not care if they could win. They wanted to fight regardless. Winning was not the point. Fighting was the point. Admiral, Ra spoke up, I have completed my analysis of their combat traditions. I have identified over 700 distinct martial arts practiced across the planet. Each region, each culture has developed its own methods of fighting. Some focus on strikes, some focus on grappling, some focus on weapons. Many humans study multiple arts simultaneously. The depth of knowledge is, she searched for the right word, terrifying. How many humans have martial arts training? Precise numbers are impossible, but based on the number of training facilities, the participation rates in combat sports, and the prevalence of fighting in their education systems, I estimate that at least 500 million humans have significant combat training, perhaps more. 500 million. The army numbered 2 million. Even if every soldier killed 50 humans before falling, they would run out of soldiers long before the humans ran out of fighters. And that assumed they could kill them at all. The shock troops were losing encounters to unarmed civilians. The advantage of plasma weapons meant nothing if the humans closed to melee range. And humans, it seemed, always closed to melee range. They prefer close combat, Al observed. Even when they have ranged weapons, they seek to close the distance. It is irrational. It is not irrational to them, Ra replied. Their fighting traditions emphasize personal combat. They believe there is honor in facing an opponent directly. They want to feel the fight, not just observe it from a distance. Had heard enough. He stood from his command chair and walked to the observation window. The armada still floated in perfect formation around Earth, but it no longer felt like a position of strength. It felt like a trap. Begin withdrawing the ground forces, he ordered. Bring them back to orbit. Admiral, we cannot hold this planet. Even if we destroyed their cities from orbit, we could never occupy them. They would fight us in the ruins. They would fight us with rocks and sticks if they had no other weapons. They would fight us until every last one of them was dead, and they would enjoy every moment of it. Al stepped forward. Admiral, the High Command will not approve a withdrawal. We have never retreated from a conquest. Then I will explain to the High Command what we have discovered. This species is not like the others. They do not fight because they must. They fight because they want to. They have spent their entire history preparing for a challenge like this. Turned from the window. And I believe they are disappointed that we are not more of a challenge. The holographic display flickered, showing a new communication from the surface. A group of humans had gathered at one of the landing sites. They were not attacking. They were waiting. Some held signs with translated text. Fight us, the signs read. What are you afraid of? Admiral, the communications officer said slowly. They are taunting us. Looked at the crowd of eager humans, the species that practiced violence for fun, that taught its children to fight before they could read, that celebrated combat as art and entertainment and sport. Yes, he said, they are. He made his decision then. The conquest was over. The withdrawal took 17 days. The ground forces were pulled back to orbit, and the Armada began its slow retreat from Earth's solar system. Fleet Admiral prepared his report for the High Command, knowing it would be the most difficult message he had ever delivered. Before he left, he ordered one final action. A warning beacon was constructed and placed in a stable orbit around Earth's sun. It broadcast continuously in all known languages of the galaxy. Warning to all vessels. The third planet of this system is inhabited by a species designated as humans. Do not approach, do not engage, do not attempt conquest. The message continued with a detailed explanation, compiled from everything they had learned during their failed invasion. It described the human fighting traditions, the training facilities, the martial arts, the combat sports. It included footage of humans fighting each other and fighting soldiers. It provided casualty statistics and psychological assessments. The final line of the warning was simple. This species practices combat for recreation. They enjoy violence. They are not a target, they are a threat. The High Command reviewed the Admiral's report in emergency session. 12 fleet admirals gathered via quantum link to hear explain why the greatest military force in the known galaxy was retreating from a planet of primitives. We could destroy them from orbit, Supreme Admiral pointed out. We could reduce their cities to glass and ash. We could end this species entirely. Yes, agreed. We could commit genocide, but we could not conquer them. And genocide is expensive. It requires resources that could be used elsewhere. It creates no value for the Dominion. He paused. And there is another consideration. Which is? They are developing faster-than-light capability. Their scientists are working on fold space technology. Within a century, perhaps less, they will become a spacefaring species. Let this sink in. Do we want to be the species that tried to exterminate them? Do we want to be their enemy when they reach the stars? The High Command was silent. I have reviewed their entertainment media, continued. Their stories about the future. They imagine themselves spreading across the galaxy. They imagine war on a cosmic scale. They dream of it. His voice dropped. They are coming, whether we like it or not. The only question is whether they will come as enemies or as something else. Supreme Admiral considered this for a long moment. What do you recommend? Quarantine the system. Mark the species as non-viable for conquest. Warn all vessels to maintain distance. And hesitated. And perhaps when they reach the stars, we should attempt diplomacy. Offer them challenges, opponents, worthy battles to fight. Channel their violence outward away from us. You want us to befriend them. I want us to survive them. These creatures have been fighting since the dawn of their existence. They will never stop. The only question is who they fight. Thought of the humans at the landing site, holding their signs, begging for combat. Better to be their ally than their enemy. Better to point them at our rivals than to face them ourselves. The High Command debated for hours, but in the end, they approved the Admiral's recommendation. The Dominion, conqueror of 63 worlds, officially added Earth to the list of forbidden systems. The warning beacon would broadcast for centuries, cautioning any species foolish enough to approach. On Earth, the humans celebrated the withdrawal as a victory. They did not know about the warning beacon or the deliberations of the High Command. They knew only that they had faced an alien invasion and the aliens had fled. The footage of humans defeating soldiers spread across the planet. The young man who had choked a squad leader became famous. The elderly martial artists in Tokyo were interviewed on news programs. The farmer in the American Midwest received offers to teach his techniques around the world. Enrollment at martial arts schools increased by 400% in the months following the invasion. Humans who had never considered combat training now wanted to learn. After all, they reasoned, there might be more aliens. Better to be prepared. Some humans were disappointed. They had hoped for a longer fight, a greater challenge. They complained that the aliens had given up too easily, that the invasion had barely been a test of humanity's true capabilities. Next time, they said to each other, we'll get a real war. The warning beacon drifted in its eternal orbit, its message playing on endless repeat. Every species that received the signal understood immediately. Earth was not to be touched. Humans were not prey. They were something far more dangerous. They were a species that loved to fight. Decades passed. Human technology advanced. Their scientists cracked the secrets of fold space travel just as had predicted. The first human ships appeared beyond their solar system, exploring, expanding, searching for whatever lay among the stars. When they encountered there was a tense moment. Ships faced each other across the void. Weapons were armed. Communications channels crackled with suspicion. Then they transmitted a single message. "We remember you. We do not wish to fight." The human commander studied the message. Behind him, his crew waited eagerly. Many of them had trained their entire lives for this moment. They had grown up on stories of the invasion, of the aliens who came and fled. They wanted to test themselves against to prove that humanity was the greater warrior species. But the commander was older and wiser. He understood that there were many ways to be strong. "We don't need to fight you," he replied, "but we're always looking for worthy opponents. Point us towards someone who deserves it." The transmitted coordinates. A species called the brutal conquerors who had enslaved a dozen worlds, tyrants who needed to be stopped. The human commander smiled. "Thank you, we'll take it from here." The human fleet changed course, heading toward new battles, new challenges, new opportunities to do what they did best. They watched them go with something like relief. The humans had found their worthy opponents. They had found their endless war. And the galaxy would never be the same. Far behind them, the warning beacon continued its broadcast, but now its message had changed slightly. Someone, perhaps with a dark sense of humor, perhaps a human hacker with too much time, had added a single line. "Do not engage, they enjoy it." Somewhere among the stars, a species that practiced combat for recreation was finally getting the fight it had always wanted. And they were just getting started.